Welcome to another edition of Bison Break. I'm your host, Brendan Whitted. I'm always excited to have my folk on here, but fellow Howard alum, I'm always super excited about Tony Carter, Director of Programs for Common Goal. Thank you for joining the show. I always love when fam is in the building. So and then you got stuff decked out. You got the Howard gear all over. I need to get my situation together.
Hey, you know how we are. We loud and obnoxious when we come through in the room, man. We let it be known. HU, you know.
Yeah, it's very annoying. I even from the outside looking in, I can be like, yeah,
we are.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, there's nothing else we can be. You know, what I mean, somebody got to be the best. It ain't easy.
It's hard, but somebody got to do it.
Well, I definitely appreciate you for jumping. Like, let's jump right in because I have so many questions for you and learning more about. Shout out to your brother Benford for connecting us because I didn't know anything that was going on with this. As I've been trying to get more on to watching soccer and learning more about soccer because it's kind of a newer sport for me, obviously not for everybody else. And so, like, finding out the stuff that you have been doing, Common Goal is inspiring and it's motivating. But before we get into all that, it's Bison Break. We like to get a chance to know folks a little bit beyond what they're doing in just in the sports realm, and just kind of get to know them as people a little bit. So, first question: holidays coming up. I don't know how much of a movie person you are, but I'm gonna put you on the spot anyway. What's your favorite Christmas movie?
Favorite Christmas movie? Ooh, I mean, I still gotta go with the Home Alone. You know, I gotta go with that. But here's the thing about it. I've really been hammering home. As my daughter, she's 7 years old and she's getting into all the traditions and everything. But lately, I'm really kind of pushing the Huey Christmas from Boondocks on the Santa Stalker, you know, all that. So, you know, I'm actually like making that a tradition in my family right now to make sure to watch that Boondocks episode all on the, you know, the history of Christmas and the Christmas story. So
that's great parenting. That is great parenting.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. It might not be the common, most popular parenting choice, but that's what I'm going with in my family.
I've gotten to this argument like literally 3 times already this week because we're right at Christmas. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Oh, you know, that debate always goes on. I think you gotta classify it as a Christmas movie.
Thank you. That's the right answer. Honestly, it's the only right answer. It really is.
And here's the funny thing about it, you know, being born and raised here in Atlanta, you know, people forget that, you know, the reason why Outkast became who they were was because of a Christmas album special of Players Anthem, you know, so that was actually a Christmas song technically.
Look at the extra culture. This is stuff you only get on Bison Break, man. Thank you. See, this is some next level deep cultural stuff that you only gonna get. All right. Question number 2. What's your ideal New Year's Eve celebration? Like, hey, you can do whatever you want to do, or maybe even a past New Year's Eve where you're just like, this was kind of peak New Year's Eve. What do you want to be doing when the ball drops?
You know, I'm actually I'm kind of like that old man in the rocking chair lately now. And so New Year's, I stay my butt at home because you know, I'm not trying to be in these streets. I'm not trying to be wise. I'm just keeping it low key. So, you know, for the last like 4 or 5 years, it's just been me and my daughter. And we've been making a tradition to be actually doing fireworks.
Nice.
We are those obnoxious ones. Even last New Year's, it was raining. It was terrible. It was like 40 degrees, raining, wet, but we were still popping those fireworks and everything like that. And to be honest, like, I wouldn't have any other way else. You know, I'm drinking champagne. She's drinking, you know, Martinelli's type of stuff or whatever.
Oh man, Martinelli's is elite.
Martinelli's is elite. Come on, man. That's the sweet nectar.
Yeah, that is right there. I love it. Yeah, man. I'm the same way. Like, you know, I definitely have gone out and done the whole like being out bar, you know, that whole thing. But it's just so many people out. I'm just like, and everyone's going like super hard. So right. Like everything gets kind of ratcheted up. I'm like, I'll leave that to them today.
I keep that day to count my blessings.
Yeah.
I'm like, let me stay at home. Let me get into the new year alive. That's what I want to do, you know.
That is very, very true. But I like the fireworks. That's a new one. I haven't heard that one before. All right. Third and final. Okay. So take you guys behind the scenes a little bit, audience. We're recording on Friday, so Sunday, I think, Sunday morning, I think is going to be the actual World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
This is my not first World Cup. This is kind of like the most involved I've ever been while watching a World Cup, where I'm like picking teams, I'm recognizing players. Talk to me a little bit about like who you got in the final first, and then like any highlights you've had while watching this World Cup.
So first of all, you're now going to be addicted. Just so you know, it's funny, like especially when we talk about the Black community with the game of soccer and what I've witnessed. I've been around the game of soccer for the last 35 plus years now, but it's funny being within the Black culture, and so many times when it gets new to people when they're in their adulthood, they always reference a specific World Cup. Mm-hmm. You know, it was that World Cup in Germany, or it was a World Cup in South Africa, or it was playing FIFA. You know, it's like those two, entry gateways that there was for them. And so I'm just warning you, you're going now start being a true fan. And you're like, yo, did you see what Pogba was wearing? The drip that he had and everything. It's gonna be your new soap opera now.
My boy Harry already was hitting me up. He was like, "Yeah, man, I just got a new kit the other day. This joint is tight." I was like, "What is happening right now?
You about to be broke too?" You know, like these jerseys, they keep going up like $140 a piece. You know?
Yeah, I was noticing that. I didn't know it was like that. I was like, "Okay, y'all real with it. Y'all very real with it." Yeah.
I'm just warning you. That's where you're going. You're headed towards. But Sunday morning, 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We got the World Cup final. You got France versus Argentina. You know, for me, historically, I've always been a French fan. You know, when I really dove into soccer around the late 90s, France won in 98. And the reason why is obviously it was always about representation. As you know, it was great to see one of us on a team. And we didn't see too much of that in the U.S. squad. We had a couple here and there. You had the Kobe Jones, the Eddie Popes. You know, that was great. But France always had like brothers. Yeah. And so that diaspora with them, I mean, I've always been a fan of them. Now, we can go into deep dives with the French national team and the way the colonialism. Like, we can that's the whole other episode.
I was about to say that. Look, we can have that episode later, man, because I would not be opposed to it at all.
That's a whole nother episode. But because of that, since they've had so many brothers, like I've always been a fan of it. Yeah. And so, I mean, I'm going for France. I hope they win. And like, even right now, all these reports about how many players are sick, they even came into the cup with a lot of depleted player personnel. So even still there, I'm going for them. I think they're going to pull it out. But at the same time, I wouldn't be mad if Argentina wins.
Because Messi would get, he would kind of get
he would check on that box.
Thing. Yeah.
He would get that monkey off his shoulder type of thing. And, there's always this debate of Ronaldo, Messi, GOATs, and then you get into the Maradona aspect of what Argentina has done. But at the same time, at the end of the day, Messi is a great professional. He is a one of a kind, one of a generation type of thing. We'll never see a player like him ever again. And so as a fan and as a soccer person, I wouldn't be mad if he walks away with the game of getting, this cup under his belt. So, but I will have to say that I will be cheering on for France.
Yeah, man. France got a lot of brothers. I was not prepared when they were like France. I was like, all right, cool. And now watch them take the picture. I was like,
yep. Yeah. But then again, like I said, when you see where these brothers are coming from,
right? Yeah. Like because I was rooting for Morocco because obviously they, African team advanced the furthest ever in the World Cup. And I was like, man, but if you got to lose. I mean, y'all lost to the the Black History All-Star. So like, I appreciate it, man.
Morocco became everybody's Cinderella story, and I don't know one person within the soccer community who wasn't going for Morocco. Even my French, I got one coach on my program. He's from France. He's a brother, but he was like, "Yo, Tony, I'm letting you know I'm going for Morocco, and if France wins, great. But at the same time, everybody wanted to see that Moroccan team do well, and they played a hell of a tournament."
They really, really did. They were really, really impressive. Well, you mentioned a little bit about how deep you've been into soccer. When did you start playing soccer?
Hey, I started when it wasn't cool. And my brother was playing. My brother's 7 years older than me, Ben, class of '96 at Howard. He was the reason why I got into the game, because he was playing and I always was doing what he was doing. And I was 5 years old, and our parents, they were both working parents, and they always had, those late hours, and they want to make sure that we had stuff to do at the school.
Right.
And I got into the game at the age of 5.
Wow, okay.
And I played whatever sport was in season. So soccer, basketball, baseball. I did that all the way up through high school. I didn't fall in love with soccer until I actually, no lie, I know we on a Howard show, but it was when I got to Howard. And to be honest, when coming here in the South and playing, soccer, it was so black or white. And I mean
Right.
that literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
I was always usually kind of like the only black kid on teams. And that story is so everybody has that experience coming into the game with here in the States. But then when I got to Howard and then truly seeing the diaspora, everybody coming from the Caribbean, Jamaica, Trinity, Burmese, all of that. And then the other part, the African teammates, from Kenya and everything like that. That's when I saw how soccer was like a religion. And that's when it became a love of mine, because I had never been so immersed with the game until I got to Howard. And then, it really was one of those things where that passion and love, it was you could not help but to be immersed in the game. When you sitting outside Cook Hall, listen to all the Jamaicans yelling and cursing about, Liverpool versus Manchester United, and you're like, oh snap, we're having deep philosophical debates about Premier League soccer. I wasn't getting that back home.
Right.
And so that was the first time where I was around other soccer nerds, if you will.
Yeah.
And they look like me.
Right.
But at the same time, so different. And so that's when I fell in love with the game, was when I got to Howard, man. No lie. I was such a basketball person for so long. And when I got to Howard and was playing on the team, that's when I started falling in love with
it. So how'd you make the decision to go to Howard?
Yeah. So here's the part of it. I'm a Spellhouse baby. Me and my brother are Spellhouse babies. Our parents both met at Spelman and Morehouse. They both taught at Spelman and Morehouse.
Oh, wow.
And so I grew up around the AU, being immersed in that. I was considering, this is back when Morehouse actually had a soccer team, but that fell to the wayside due to some NCAA infractions. But nevertheless, I contemplated going to Morehouse. And Morehouse, I would have been on the team right away. Howard, I had to walk on.
Okay.
I wasn't recruited. I had good conversation with Coach Landy and Coach Tucker, but I was coming on as a walk on. Whereas Morehouse would have had my spot. And what really made the kicker of coming to Howard was obviously Howard being a D1 program and the history of, winning the national titles back in the 70s. And then having guys who played at a high level. One of my favorite players growing up before I even got to Howard was Shaka Islam. And Shaka, played for Howard back in the early 90s, had that great success, then goes on to play professionally in Europe. And now he's a analyst and commentator for ESPN FC. He's really a true Bison at the highest level. And he played goalkeeper, and I played goalkeeper.
Oh.
And I wanted to be like that. And so I was like, yo, it's not even a question. I want to go, if I want to be like that, Howard has that. You know what I'm saying? They have top level people in all industries. It doesn't matter if you talk about law, if you talk about business, if you talk about science. I mean, it doesn't matter. Howard is doing it to the nth degree. And so it wasn't even a question at that point, why not be a part of that? And all my team would say I was not the best, but I wasn't the worst. And I wanted to make sure that my college experience was, to truly enjoy it. And so, I look at that as one of those pivotal key decisions I made, and it ended up being one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life, was going to Howard,
I want you to talk to me a little bit about Common Goal. You guys were actually highlighted on Fox Sports 1 during the World Cup coverage. And just talk a little bit about what the program is and soccer in the streets, and just talk to me a little bit about that, because the more I learned by it, the more fascinated I became by it, and the more impactful it feels like that your work is.
Yeah. So the way it works is that I work here locally in Atlanta, Georgia, with Soccer in the Streets. And our whole aspect is that we're providing access to the game of soccer. And so, as you all know, here in the States, soccer is a country club sport.
Right.
The whole pay to play model has really crippled the game in various aspects. Whether you're talking about national team, whether you're talking about after school resources, like all those things is just crippled the sport within.
And when you say pay to play, just for clarity, for if people aren't as familiar with that, you mean like just the amount of money that they need in order to play on some of these teams, right?
So again, here in the States, we have been conditioned to accept the norm that if you're doing an after school sport, that you're going to have to pay for that.
Right.
Whereas in a lot of other countries, that is not the case. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of, systems set up so that kids are actually able to participate in after school programs and they're not having to pay for that. And so the pay to play model has been, as we think about the stereotypes with soccer moms and minivans and all this stuff, like we just know and associate that soccer is an elitist type sport, whether it's like golf and everything like that. And so that whole model has been the norm and it really should not be. And so there's organizations like Soccer in the Streets here in Atlanta, all throughout the world, that are making sure not only that you're talking about the pay to play model is not an issue, but two, making sure that you're looking at kids in a holistic manner, that you're talking about the character development, that you're talking about mental health, that you're talking about physical health, that you're talking about access, whether it's a disability or not. And so Common Goal is essentially a network of 100+ organizations like Soccer in the Streets in Atlanta, like Soccer Without Borders, like a DC Scores, where we are all organizations like that. We're trying to make sure that kids are always having an opportunity to play the beautiful game. That's essentially what we're getting at.
That's really cool. How'd you get involved with them?
It's funny, you always have that professional moment in your life when you're like, there's really got to be a better way of doing this. Or I love what I do, but I want to make sure that I'm doing it for good type of thing. And everybody gets to that point in time, whether it's early in your career or later in your career, whether you're 25 or whether you're 45, you have that moment of when you're like, I really should be doing something for good. And, I coached high school soccer for 12 years at a private school here in Atlanta. And I got to this point where I got kind of tired of being in that industry and being a part of the problem, of saying like, I've always had these issues that like, yes, this game should be open to the masses. Two, I want to see more of us playing the game. For so long, I was always called a white kid because
you're playing a very white sport.
Exactly. And we know what we can contribute to this game. Right. We see it in other countries.
Right.
And so like the other aspect was too, I wanted to see more of us playing. So no lie, I Googled soccer for good. And here in Atlanta, Soccer in the Streets popped up and really did my homework and started researching and everything. I was like, oh, not only are they providing access to the game, they're actually like working on character development. They're actually looking at the total kid. I can get behind that. Like, I like that. And they're also in tough neighborhoods. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That's the other aspect of this too. Like, there's such an issue of making sure that kids in, what we call tough neighborhoods, the reason why they're tough is because these kids don't have anything to do.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I got connected with Soccer in the Streets back in 2018. Started as a coach, then a program manager, now director of programs, and then Common Goal. They've been a partner in how we operate and move and everything like that. And so it's just growing on so many levels as far as like, I thought I knew one thing of like what I thought was the issue with the game, but now it's just like, oh, this rabbit hole goes deep.
Well, that's why I wanted to ask you, like, cause you mentioned, when you started playing, you were usually, one of very few or maybe the only Black kid that was playing on these teams. We're seeing a little bit more soccer just generally get bigger in America. I feel like since we were younger. Have you noticed that stigma has worn off any? And if so, what would you kind of maybe attribute that to?
So factually, like there's more kids of color playing than ever before. That can definitely be said, and it's great. I think obviously what we see in our society as well too, that gap is expanding. So you're still seeing like a
Yeah.
huge gap of the haves and the have-nots. Like, yeah, we might have more black kids playing, but again, these are black kids who have access to resources. You know, they're coming from middle class, and we know how that middle class is getting wider and wider of the haves and have-nots. So there's that part, but still, we're not seeing as many black kids who are coming from low-income families play the game as much, and it's still the exposure thing that we're still working on. But this is the other thing psychologically, as far as you talk about the rabbit hole and the colorism and the stereotypes and everything like that. The big issue that I deal with it, like the game within the game and dealing with coaches and the biases and everything like that, you're still seeing these biases of like, oh, this black kid, A, they must be fast. B, put them up top, put them up front. They're going to just be score, score, score. There's still those issues, just like in American football, you know, whether it's the issue of can a black person play quarterback, same thing in soccer, can a black person play center mid, which is known as like the quarterback within the soccer team. And so that's the issue, like the game within the game that I'm starting to combat with dealing with coaches and dealing with those biases. And when, especially when we're dealing with like European coaches coming here to the States, they still have these biases like, oh, this black kid, let me put him up top or let me put them on the wing. Rarely ever are they looked upon to be a center mid type of person or the backline defender type of thing. So
I was going to ask you. I'm glad you mentioned the European game. I talked about like kind of getting more into soccer because I've started following Arsenal and the EPL. So like I had to pick a team because that's the only way I'm able to kind of like really get something from it. But like as I've started to learn more about it, I knew about this a little bit on the periphery just because I follow sports generally. But like there's been a lot of like very specific anti-black stuff that goes on with soccer, like monkeys and bananas. Like not even new, it's not even nuanced or anything. It's just like straight up old school, like nope, racist, like very old school type of racist giant. I guess from the people that invented it. But like I do want to ask a little bit about like how you maybe combat that. I guess America maybe is a little bit different because you know the EPL is not the MLS and stuff like that. Is that something that you find a lot in terms of some of those sentiments are still there? You mentioned the coaching. Is there anything else in that regard?
It's still here. It's still prevalent, and common goal. That's the whole thing. Like we came up with this whole anti-racism campaign. As far as like, it's more of the educational aspect for the coaches to actually address racism within their teams. And so, like, yeah, you're still getting the overt stuff every season. So I'm director of programs and I'm running like all the teams and age levels, and they're playing all these different competitions. Every season we're dealing with racial complaints, and especially like right now we have some teams that are pretty much all refugee teams. So they're coming from, you know, these war-torn countries, most of them coming from African countries. And so of course they're the target of issues of not only racism, but then like the whole, there's like the go back to your country. Like you would be like you said, that old school, like, hey, like, can y'all at least upgrade your racism?
Can you remix that joint a little bit? Give me something new, little fresh.
Right. But so there's so much that it still needs to be done in the game. And like that's what we were trying to do with Common Goal, is to figure out like, and then of course it spawned from just like everything else in society from 2020 with the social injustice movement that we saw. Like it spawned so much that we were like, yo, we gotta do something better than this. Like within the MLS, you're seeing the Black Players for Change. Right now, you know, these professionals, like, yo, we gotta have a voice to stand up. Just like the NBA has been supported with all the initiatives they're going, the MLS similarly, the players stood up and just like, yo, we got a voice, and we're tired of hearing these things because the beautiful game. What's so beautiful about it is like I've been in so many scenarios where nobody spoke the same language. But you moving that ball around and you just have this unspoken language of how to play the game, no matter the skill level. And it's such, and that's why when you get to experience it, that's why you're like, yo, this thing is beautiful. It's the beautiful game. But with that being said, you are getting a melting pot of all these cultures, and they come with so many stories and biases and all these things that they're unaware or aware of. And so when you get all that in one piece, like you're going to have these instances where people just like, for a lack of a better word, they are ignorant to certain things.
Yeah.
And they have no idea of how. There have been so many times in soccer where they're like, yo, Tony, you're the first Black player that I played with. And you're like, dude, you came from South America. How's that true?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, so you do have to educate. We just like we have to re-educate people in society. Like, no, that's offensive. That's a problem. Same thing on the soccer field. Like, it's those sicknesses that we've seen in our society has definitely trickled over into the soccer field. And there's a great book that I would definitely suggest if you really want to dive into the rabbit hole. It's called How Soccer Explains the World.
How Soccer Explains the World. Okay.
And it gets into the geopolitics of soccer and goes into the different continents of how religions and politics through soccer has been a tool to move political systems, religious systems. And that's when you really look at how soccer is really like, oh my gosh, I did not realize the power. We think football here in America, American football, is a religion. No. And it's just crazy. And so I say all that when you couple that this is the world's game, and America is still a young country, and America is still young at being exposed to this game in its infancy, there is so many issues that have not been addressed for these decades long of this game being here. And whether there's so many of these institutions where it's governing bodies, whether it's the federations, like these biases that come through the federations, it's ridiculous. And I hope some of y'all have seen that FIFA. Was it FIFA? It's the Netflix series FIFA Exposed.
Oh yeah, FIFA Explained or something like that.
Yeah. And you start to see like, oh, this racism runs deep.
Yeah.
When
I actually just put that on my list. Like that's
like,
kind of the next thing
you see, like the whole initial point of where FIFA took a change was with the whole apartheid movement in South Africa. That moment was a shift. And so when you talk about racism in soccer, I mean, just like American and racism, we know that goes hand in hand. Same thing with soccer. It almost goes hand in hand, unfortunately. And really, I mean, to sum it all up, long story long, man, I am just trying to do my part with what I know and what I've experienced to try to make it a better place for the next generation. That is simply what I'm trying to do, brother.
Your passion for what you're doing is very obvious. I thank you so much for your time. I'm gonna get you out here on this. I'm sure a large part of your organization is the importance of resources. If you could give a 30-second pitch to fellow Howard alum about the importance of giving back to our athletic program, what would you say? Just something quickly.
Hey, seriously, first of all, thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely.
But, to get our voice out here, I just want a voice for those that have not been represented. There's a lot of youth of color, Black, Latino, whatever it may be across the country that just don't have options of what to do after school. Here locally in Atlanta, we're dealing with a huge youth violence and gun violence issue because of the lack of resources and options after school. And I know that is not unique to Atlanta. That is happening all across the country. And so what I just urge my fellow Bison is to look into these after school programs, especially sports programs for kids. We know that like that time, that 3 to 5 o'clock time frame after school, that's when things go down. And so I just urge you to support them, whether it be financially, with your time, mentoring. Please look into your local sports-based youth development programs. If you need help with that, you can go to commongoal.org, or you can hit me up at Tony at soccerstreets.org as well too. I can connect you to those things to make sure that you can get those kids off the street locally. And again, I appreciate, Brendan, this time that you've been able to allow me to tell my story and to highlight what is going on in the beautiful game, man.
Tony at soccerstreets.org. To hit him up and maybe get involved in that. As always, I'll close on saying bisonexpress.org/give. the more you give, the more we all get in terms of our Howard athletic program. We see the importance of giving back to athletic programs. When you look at the HBCU kind of landscape and news and be able to keep talent, like coaching talent in-house, all of this stuff matters. So please, bisonexpress.org/give. Tony, thank you so much. I really gotta have you back on just to kind of get into some more of this stuff, because like you called it. I'm becoming a soccer fiend, so like you are definitely you definitely finna be back on the Giant, and we're gonna have to break some more stuff down for me, because I'm still learning, but I'm still really enjoying it, man. Thank you so much for your time. This has been an amazing conversation.
Hey, man, I appreciate it, man. Again, thank you. It's an honor, man, and always HU, baby.
You know, take it easy, Bison.
Yes, sir.